It just happened last weekend, and I still can't believe any of it is real. My friends had been trying to set me up on a blind date for like 3 months straight. Every single time we hung out, they'd bring it up, and every single time I'd say no. Because honestly, blind dates just seemed awkward and forced to me. But my buddy Marcus wouldn't let it go. He kept insisting he knew this girl who would be perfect for me. That we had everything in common. That I was being an idiot for not giving it a shot. Finally, I just said yes to shut him up. I didn't think he was actually serious, though. I figured he'd forget about it by the next day. Then on Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, saying the date was set for Sunday at 3. He sent me the address of some coffee shop by the lake in Denver. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. I texted back asking if this was another one of his pranks because they'd pulled stuff like this before. Once they signed me up for a speed dating thing without telling me, and I had to sit through 20 conversations about cats and CrossFit. Marcus swore up and down it was real this time. He said her name was Sophie, and that she was expecting me. I told him fine, but if this turned out to be a joke, he owed me beer for a month. Saturday came and went, and I kept waiting for him to text and say he was kidding. But nothing came. Sunday morning, I woke up thinking there was no way I was actually going to go through with this. I spent most of the morning working in my garage. I'm a mechanic, and I've been restoring this old Chevy pickup for the past year. And I got so focused on replacing the brake lines that I completely forgot about the whole date thing until my alarm went off at 2:30, reminding me I had somewhere to be. I stood there, covered in grease, staring at my phone, debating whether to just ignore it. Then I thought about how Marcus would never let me hear the end of it if I bailed. So I cleaned up, changed into jeans and a clean shirt, and drove to the coffee shop expecting to walk into some elaborate prank. The place was called Lakeview Coffee, and it sat right on the water with big windows and wooden tables. It was busy for a Sunday afternoon, families and couples everywhere. I ordered a black coffee and found a table by the window where I could watch the door. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Marcus to text, and admit this was all a setup. 3 o'clock came and went. No text, no call. I was about to leave when the door opened and she walked in. I'm not even exaggerating when I say everything around me just stopped. She had long dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she was wearing this flowy sundress that was light blue with little white flowers on it. She had a calm confidence about her, like she was completely comfortable in her own skin. She looked around the coffee shop, and when her eyes landed on me, she smiled. Not a big dramatic smile, but this soft, genuine one that made my chest feel tight. She walked straight over to my table, and I stood up so fast I almost knocked my coffee over. She said, "Are you Jake?" And I nodded like an idiot. She laughed and said, "I'm Sophie, and I'm guessing we're both victims of the same setup." Yet her voice was warm and had this slight rasp to it that I immediately liked. I finally found my words and said, "Looks like our friends are in on this together." She sat down across from me, and suddenly I forgot every reason I thought blind dates were a bad idea. We started talking, and it didn't feel forced at all. She told me her friend Rachel had been bugging her to go on this date for weeks. She thought it was a joke too until Rachel sent her my picture and the coffee shop address. I asked what she did for work, and she said she was a veterinary technician at a clinic on the south side of Denver. Her whole face lit up when she talked about the animals she worked with. I told her I was a mechanic and worked at a shop downtown. But mostly, I spent my free time restoring old cars. Well, she leaned forward and asked what I was working on right now. I told her about the Chevy, and she actually seemed interested. She asked real questions about the engine and the paint color I was going to use. Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about cars. but she was genuinely curious. We talked for over an hour without even realizing it. She told me she grew up in a small town in Wyoming and moved to Denver for school. She had a dog named Copper, who was a golden retriever mix and apparently very spoiled. I told her I'd always wanted a dog, but my apartment didn't allow pets. She said that was a crime, and anyone who worked with their hands all day deserved to come home to a dog. The way she said it made me smile, like she already understood something about me without me having to explain it. We ordered more coffee and kept talking. Well, she asked about my family, and I told her about my mom, who still lived in my hometown and called me every Sunday without fail. She told me about her parents who ran a ranch back in Wyoming and how she missed it sometimes, but loved the city too much to move back. At some point, I noticed the sun was starting to set outside, and the coffee shop was getting quieter. I checked my phone and realized we'd been sitting there for almost 3 hours. She noticed too, and her eyes went wide. She said she couldn't believe how fast the time went. I said me neither, and I meant it. We walked outside together, and the air was cooling down. Her car was parked a few spots down from mine. We stood there in that awkward moment where neither of us wanted to say goodbye, but we didn't know what else to do. And she broke the silence first and said she had a really good time. I said I did too and asked if she wanted to do it again sometime. She smiled and said she'd like that. We exchanged numbers and she gave me a quick hug before getting in her car. I watched her drive away and stood there in the parking lot trying to process what just happened. I got in my truck and immediately called Marcus. He picked up laughing and asked how it went. I told him I owed him way more than a month of beer. That night I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she laughed. The way she listened like what I was saying actually mattered. The way she looked at me across that table. I kept replaying every moment of the conversation in my head. Around 10, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. But it was Sophie saying thanks for the coffee and that she meant what she said about doing it again. I texted back right away, saying I was free next weekend if she was. She said she was, and asked if I liked hiking. I said I did, even though I